It began on a quiet day with nothing in my inventory but a basic watering can and a dream. I spawned into the bright, cheerful world of Roblox. Grow a garden, where flowers bloomed in every corner and crops danced in the sun. My plot was nothing more than a small piece of rough dirt tucked between the towering gardens of players who had clearly been there much longer than I had. They had machines and sprinklers and tools that sparkled with every move, while I had a shovel and a handful of starter seeds. Still, I stood there full of curiosity, wondering how far I could go without buying anything. No Robux, no boosts, no shortcuts, just effort and time, and maybe a little bit of stubbornness. Some might have called it foolish to try to farm like a pro without spending a thing, but I saw it as a challenge. I saw it as the only way to truly earn what I grew. And so I knelt beside my first tiny square of soil and planted my very first seed. The soil was hard, and the seed felt small. It was not flashy, and it definitely did not grow quickly, but I stayed with it. I watched the sun shift across the sky while other players zipped past, dropping rows of seeds in a blur of motion. They had speed and upgrades and instant results, but I had patience. I watered my little patch carefully, watching it inch its way to life. It sprouted slowly but surely, and when I harvested it for the first time, I felt something deep and satisfying, not just because I had earned something, but because I had done it with nothing but grit. That was the moment I knew this journey would be different. This was not about keeping up with others. This was not about how fast I could get the biggest farm. This was about building something from scratch and understanding every corner of it. This was about learning how to make every step count, every drop of water matter, every second of growth meaningful. I began to understand the rhythm of the garden, the flow of planting, watering, harvesting, and planting again. I began to see the patterns behind the crops, how some grew quickly and others slowly, how some needed more attention and others could be left for a little while. I started to use that knowledge not to copy what others were doing, but to find my own path. My goal was not to match them in speed, but to outplay them in strategy. It was hard at first. My backpack filled too quickly, and I had to walk back and forth constantly. My energy ran out, and I could not cover as much ground as I wanted. My tools broke more often than I liked, and progress felt slow, but I reminded myself this was the point. This was the test. The game was showing me its rules, and I was learning how to play by them without paying to rewrite them. I mapped out my plots in rows and circles and spirals, testing layouts and flow. I tried different seeds and watched how they behaved in the sun and rain of the game. I counted steps and compared times in my head, always adjusting, always optimizing while others flew around with power tools. I was learning how to move smarter, not faster. I was becoming a farmer of the mind, not just of the land. Eventually, I started to see results not in the size of my farm or the shine of my tools, but in the smoothness of my loops. I moved with purpose. I harvested with intention. I replanted without waste. My field was no longer just a patch of dirt. It was a living, breathing system, and every part of it I had built with my own hands. Some players would pass by and stop to watch. They saw me working, and maybe they wondered how someone with no glowing tools and no fancy boosts was still keeping the wind, was gentle across the starting field. As I took my very first step into the world of Grow a Garden, around me the land stretched wide with seasoned players darting past on shiny vehicles, dropping seeds and harvesting without pause, as if they were a part of the earth itself. I stood still, gripping the basic watering can in my hand, unsure of where to begin. No Robux, no boosters, no flashy tools, just me, my thoughts, and the unshaped future of my empty plot. There was a time when I thought everything in this world revolved around shiny extras and exclusive perks. It seemed like every player who zoomed past had some glowing aura, some super seed, some impossibly quick harvester that made everything look effortless. It made me wonder, could someone like me with zero extras really thrive in this place? Could I ever compete without spending anything? Could I rise from the soil itself and become something worth noticing? I remember kneeling by my tiny patch of dirt, the kind of patch that barely had room for more than a handful of crops. The soil was stubborn at first, refusing to soften under my beginner tools. The first few seeds I dropped looked fragile, uncertain, and it felt like the wind might just blow them away. I stayed close, watering them slowly, watching them as if they were made of gold, waiting for a miracle. They did not grow instantly, but when they finally sprouted, it was like a fire had lit inside me. That was the first time I realized that patience here could grow more than crops. It could grow strength. Each day became a cycle, not of repetition, but of routine. Each action carried weight. Every decision mattered. I learned to plan my layout, to stretch my energy as far as it could go. I counted every second as I moved through the motions of tending, harvesting, replanting over and over again. There were no shortcuts for me, no magic buttons to speed things up. I had to feel the heartbeat of the garden itself and match it with my own rhythm. Some days were tough. The weather in the game never changed, but the mood inside me did. There were moments when I watched others expand their fields with ease, their upgrades glimmering across the hills, while I stood with aching feet and a full backpack of common crops. I questioned myself, I questioned the soil, I questioned the dream, but I kept going because something inside me whispered louder than the doubts. That voice said, you don't need to pay to play like a pro, you just need to understand the game better than anyone else. I learned to maximize space and movement, to make every square on my field work harder. I discovered combinations that kept my hands moving and my crops cycling. I became faster, not because of better tools, but because I became sharper. I saw opportunities where others saw limitations. I used my beginner tools like a craftsman would use a chisel. Slow at first, but deliberate, precise, effective. There were tricks I picked up that had nothing to do with spending and everything to do with watching, learning, experimenting. I noticed patterns in how long certain crops took and how to fit them into my loop without slowing down. I figured out which tools to prioritize for upgrades based purely on performance rather than flash. I built my own systems, not from tutorials or trending videos, but from the sweat of my own experiments. Each mistake became a blueprint. Each win, no matter how small, became fuel for the fire. When I finally unlocked more land, it felt like discovering a hidden part of myself. The moment I laid down the first fence post on that expanded ground, I remembered the patch I had started with, so small and uncertain. Now my garden had grown, but more importantly, so had I. I was not faster because of Robux. I was better because of effort. I was not richer because of pay to win. I was stronger because of will to play. There were many who asked me how I did it, what secrets I had, whether I had found some hidden code or glitch, and every time I smiled and said the same thing. I watched, I waited, I worked, I never paid, and yet I never stopped. There was a power in being the underdog, in building something from the ground up with nothing but knowledge and patience as your tools. It made every win feel 10 times more powerful. I remember one day vividly. I was walking through my garden during peak play hours. Players zipped across the path beside my field, and one of them stopped. I saw their name hover near my border, and for a moment they stood there just watching. Then the message came through, a simple one: how did you grow so fast with no game passes? I smiled. Not because I was proud of what I had, but because I knew what it took to get there. I replied with honesty. I studied my crops, I worked my loops, I never left a single tile idle, and I never gave up. Being a no Robux player did not mean being at a disadvantage. It meant thinking more, playing smarter, and mastering the flow of the game better than those who relied on speed to make up for strategy. One was not flashy, but I was efficient. I was not upgraded, but I was optimized. Every inch of my farm told a story, not of what I bought, but of what I built with time and patience. Over time, I began to mentor other beginners, helping them see the power they held even without spending a single coin. I showed them how to plan their fields, how to move without waste, how to think 3 harvests ahead. I watched them grow, and some of them surpassed even my own progress. But that was never a threat to me. It was a triumph, because every no Robux player who succeeded reminded me of who I was and why I chose this path. There was a purity to this strategy, a kind of satisfaction that money could never buy. It was not just about the harvest, it was about the journey, the trial, the persistence. It was about looking at a full field and knowing every single plant had your effort behind it, not your wallet. So, when someone asks me today if it's possible to play like a pro without spending anything, I do not hesitate. I tell them, yes, not only is it possible, it is powerful. You learn more, you grow stronger, and you appreciate every win tenfold. Because in the world of grow a garden, greatness is not purchased, it is planted, it is watered, it is grown. And the best part of all is knowing that somewhere out there someone is standing on their first patch of dirt, wondering if they can make it too. To them I say this: look at your seeds, look at your soil, take a deep breath, and get to work. You do not need Robux to farm like a pro, you only need the will to grow.